It's not a box of laser paper. Have you ever gone for basically most of your life, never known something was in existence, and then found out about something and went, oh my god, I've got to have that. Get one. And then, I don't know if it's been a few weeks, but not much. It hasn't been 2 months, maybe a little over a month. I find another one. I mean, what the hell? So, eBay purchase. So if you've watched the previous video I did on a Lafayette antenna switcher. Well, not just antenna switcher, actually it's a radio and antenna switcher. So that was that almost glow-in-the-dark green color, blindingly bright switch box that has 20 positions. So 20, you hook up one antenna to 20 different radios, but it also switched the DC power. So now this isn't a Lafayette, and this is extremely horribly packaged. That's the first thing I need to say. So whoever in the household, the seller of this on eBay, they did a crappy job. You can see the packing material. Yeah, a piece of cardboard. That's all that was separating my item from the outside world of the Postal Service. So I'm sure some of these dings here, and this one's not metal, this one's wood, so actually particle board with a vinyl decal on it. But this one's I think it's Amco, and I saw this one, I was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me, another one? Oh yeah, they didn't just put it in a box. They shoved it in there, it's so tight. Yeah, this guy's going to get if this thing's got damage, he's going to get a negative feedback, but he's going to get a neutral feedback at the very least, because this is bullshit. Pardon my French. Nothing pisses me off more than crappy packaging. Not even a single wrap of bubble wrap. I mean, really? Jesus, what did they do? Glue it in the damn box? Well, it looks like it survived. It didn't explode. But there it is. I have never seen one. Again, this one has push buttons like the other one. This one actually has indicator lights, something the other one did not have. I actually like this one better, and I'll show you that on the back in a second. It switches the speaker, too. That's the one thing that, I don't want to say I didn't like. I love that Lafayette. But, so, if you remember that video, this does the same thing. When you hit a button, so if you hook up 20 radios to this, when you push this button, radio 1 will come on. Switches the antenna over and then also supplies the power to the radio. So your power supply hooks to this, and then this distributes 12 volts out to the, all of the 20 radios. And when you push the buttons in, it switches not only the antenna, but the power as well. This one also switches the speaker. So you hook up one speaker. See? Speaker outputs. And you know this was for a store display. Demo speaker. That definitely gives it away. But yeah, Amco Electronics. Northridge, California. But, so again, this one has a 12 volt power distribution. Again, I'll never use this negative. Because you have to remember radios. You see the coax connectors here, okay? They're attached to this metal chassis, which is what they had this negative terminal attached to. If you look inside of your radio, you will find that your radios, and it's the same as I described with that Lafayette one, I'll never use the ground stud on there, but inside your radio, the chassis, the metal, or like this, the box, it's wood in this case, but in a radio, this would be, the metal chassis, is not directly connected to ground. There's a DC ground, and then there's chassis ground, and they're separated by capacitors. Helps to prevent ground loops. There's all different reasons, but yeah, they're not designed to be connected. And what you can end up with is if you hook your ground up here, and actually you would have to hook up a ground, I guess, to get the LEDs to work in this. Damn, actually, Now I got to think about that now, because actually, if I hook up the power supply to this. I'm going to need a ground for those indicator LEDs. Well, it'd just be a matter of redesigning it ever so slightly to isolate the ground from the antenna connectors. But let's have a look-see inside of this one and see exactly how this one is set up compared to that Lafayette. Now, this one has push-button switches just like the Lafayette did. Of course, this one is going to have at least one extra section, and that's so nice. So now you can hook up, in my case, I've got noise filters, or, SSB, AM, CW filters, so I can use like one of my All-Tech researches or a DSP filter, run that to a really good high-quality speaker, and hook up 20 radios. So you'd have your power hooked up here, out to your 20 different radios, your antennas. The output, so the external speaker jacks on your radios, you'd plug into that, and then you just the other end of the cord, you would attach to the speaker jacks here. And then when you switch a radio on, the output, it'll take that, so if you've got, let's say, radio 11 switched on, the audio will come in here and then be directed out this jack here. And then I can run it through my, central, basically, audio processing. Oh, and this is another one. Tight as a... Oh, actually, it looks like it's a metal box, which makes sense. That actually makes a lot of sense now that I think about it. It's a metal box because you're going to want an RF shield. All these antenna connections down here. So yeah, there's actually it's a shielded box in there. And this looks like another one. God, how did they get all this shit crammed in here? I guess it squeezes out. How does it come out? It's glued in there, maybe. Aha! There's screws in the bottom. I see holes. Aha. So the entire box should probably just slide out. This is going to have to come apart anyhow because I've got to clean all the switches. Yeah, you can see just the white dust. Oxidation on the screw heads there. Yep, and there it comes. So yeah, that's all it was. So yes, it is nice to see that it's in a RF shielding enclosure. Let me get the box out the way here. Okay. It's a little bit easier to manage now. Still, man, these cables. Oh, do these shields pop? Aha! Somebody had their thinking cap on when they did this. Grab a little small screwdriver. The top and bottom plates just pop off. So as far as working on it, this one's actually easier. It's easier to take apart. Oh, they're actual light bulbs. And look at that, they even give you a free spare. It doesn't use... Of course, I'm thinking LEDs, modern day. Gotta remember, this thing's from the 70s, so the LEDs were expensive back then, where the light bulbs are now more expensive than LEDs are. But yeah, they even gave you a spare one. So luckily, and I'll just leave it I'll just leave it incandescent, leave it stock. And I've got plenty of those bulbs if I ever need them. Actually, that's what I'm. Let's see here. Where in the hell's my light bulbs at? Yeah, I've got plenty of those. Exact same style, same fairly large head, and these are 12 volt. So yeah, I got a couple bags of them. So. Actually, I don't know. They might not be 12 volt. I see a resistor. What is that? It is a 47 ohm resistor on each of those. There's a 100 meg. Is that what is that? No, that's I'm going to have to actually look at this one and see how exactly they have it wired up. So the red and the blacks, those are all the powers. The browns are all speaker. So actually those pins, they might be doing... I wonder if they have those on the other pins for when you push one button. So RF, I mean, even though the radio will be turned off, still when you push a button, RF energy inside this cabinet could leach back in through, you know, so if you had a radio hooked up here, all of the other radios could be RF voltage could possibly feed back into those. It looks like that might be what they did. I'll have to ohm out this switch and see how it's wired up. But yeah, this one actually might even be better designed. That's one thing the Lafayette did not have. Like I say, the radios are going to be turned off because this switches the power from radio to radio. But yeah, that's actually a good idea. That could prevent any voltage from, you know, RF energy from leaching back into a radio. Even though it's all still just, you know, basically I guess to protect the front end so you don't have... Because you are going to have a transmitter and 9 non-turned-on receivers hooked up to those other 19 connections. But yeah, there you go. So, man, I mean, just talk about luck. Years and years I've never seen one of these things. I find that Lafayette, and then in a matter of no time, you know, between a month or two, like I said, I don't know, I'd have to check. But, you know, say a month or two, I find another one. And this one's even better. And you can see at one point in time there's some sticker residue, which oh, it's still gummy. It's not dried. Thank God. I'll be able to get that easily off. But, yeah, somebody probably had a, you know, plate on here. I'm assuming this was in a store, probably like that Lafayette. It was a store display, you know. And they had a paper taped on here that listed the 20 radios. So, you know, you could walk into your local electronics store and say, hey, man, fire up that Cobra 2000. Well, it wouldn't be a 2000, that's a base station. But let's say a Cobra 148. And, you know, you'd pick number 4, and then you could just sit there and compare that with a Robin or a Lafayette or a Realista. You know, you could just, you know, flip from radio to radio. This actually makes it really nice, actually, for doing that type of stuff. You could set 20 radios up, put them all on the same channel, hooked up to one signal generator, have the audio output going to a synad meter, and just sit here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just go through all 20, and you could compare 20 receivers directly with each other. They'd all be running off the same signal generator, all the wiring is going to be the same. I might actually use one of those. Actually, it would be this one because I'd need the speaker output. Yeah, I might actually use this one at the bench. Set this one up for doing side-by-side comparisons. But there you go. So, yeah, luckily the cabinet survived. Oh, I would have been so pissed if this thing... I mean, honestly, if this had been damaged, this cabinet, I could just make a new one. I'd go out to the wood shop and pop one of these. I mean, the vinyl decal would be a pain to relaminate. But I'd probably have made something like a mahogany or a curly walnut cabinet for it, but it's fine. So I'll of course leave it original, you know, keep its, you know, vintage aesthetics. But there you go. So there's another 20 radio, antenna, radio, and in the case of this one, speaker switch. So there you go, the Amco switching box. So there you go. I figured, oh, what the heck, do like I did with the Lafayette. If I remember right, I think I actually hooked some radios up to that. So it's hooked. Actually, the first thing I did was already had it apart. Went ahead, cleaned all the switches, made sure all the light bulbs worked before I put it back together, which they do. So you know, there was one down to 20. Cleaned up the cabinet while I had it apart. Quick, like you probably heard me say it before on radios, anything that's black has these vinyl style decal covers to include radios, or even black painted radio cabinets. Easy way to shine them up a little bit better, black shoe polish. Does wonders for black stuff. So yeah, the cabinet was cleaned, coat of shoe polish on it, so you can see nice and shiny now. got all that gunky residue from the tape off of it, and have it hooked up to 2 radios. Just grab 2 random radios off the shelf of mine that, yeah, I might get around to restoring before I die, but so they do both work. But yep, that's what it does. So that's, like I said, I've got those 2 hooked up, and I did hook up the speakers. So the speakers come, actually, little small black cables are there. So both the external speaker jacks, on the end of those wires, they're just bare-ended. So basically, it's just a cable that was cut in half, and then the ends stripped. And they're attached to the terminal strip on the back, and then the terminal strip on the back, I have that running. Actually, one of my little test clips I have is just a 1/8" jack with a wire comes off with some alligator clips, and I have that hooked up to what says demo speaker on the back of this. So it works fine. The speaker switching works, the power switching works, antenna. I mean, it's a mechanical switch. I mean, it literally would have to physically break. So there you go. Like I said, I just thought I'd do a quickie to show how, like I said, now I've got 2 of these. I can hook up 40 radios. So, yeah, if I can find about either brand, Lafayette, Amco, hell, I didn't know either of them made them to start with. There may be a bunch of other companies that made these things. I've never seen them before. But yeah, if I can find about 18 more now, because I remember that video, I said, man, I need about 20 of them, so I'm partway there. I can find about 18 more 20-position radio switches. Man, I could get a good chunk of my collection hooked up. You know, actually I'd need 21. You know, have 20 of them to hook up the radios, and then the 21st one, I would use that to select which one of these boxes was hooked up. So I'd have, you know, the antenna jack on this, the main antenna jack on this would go over to another switch box. But yeah, that way I could have 20 boxes of basically with controlling, each one controlling 20 radios, and then I would have a main box that would control those 20 boxes then. But yeah, then I could get a museum going, because, man, I've got enough radios for a museum. But there you go. So there's another, I'm going to have to say extremely rare, because I'd never seen the Lafayette. I've never seen one of these until now. And by the way, I stole this thing. Other than the crappy packaging, you know, thank God. There's a little bit of a dent right here. I didn't even notice it before till I was really cleaning it. Right on the front edge, this knife edge, you know, because this thing's tapered here and tapered here. There is a little ding right here. There's a little smooch down here in this corner. I think that was there before. But yeah, I don't know. This one probably happened in shipping, because you saw how much, or lack thereof, packing material. But yeah, like I say, the faceplate cleaned up nice. So yeah, maybe I can find a few more of these things. You know, actually, they wouldn't be hard to make. And another thing I got to thinking about was, of course, this is set up for controlling mobile radios. Now, you could use this with a base station. Most, not all, but most base stations do have a 12-volt input jack on the back. So they can be run off of a 12-volt power supply. So you could be perfectly fine using this with a base station radio. You would just run your power cord into that plug-in. It's got a socket, just like, you know, these radios do on the back of it for a power cord. Another option is, even if it does not operate off of, you know, doesn't have a jack on the back to operate off 12 volts, but needs to operate off 120, that would still be fairly easy to do with something like this. I've got hundreds, actually probably close to 2,000 of them. Honestly, I've got cases of them. The octal relays, so they're called Ice Cube. If you're in industry, if you've ever worked in an industrial environment, you'll know what I'm talking about. The Ice Cube octal relays. So they look like they have a tube pin base, the old octal style socket or plug on the bottom of them, and they call them Ice Cubes because they're about that tall and they're about that big a square. Local company went out of business years ago, had an auction. I bought their entire, basically, parts department and or not parts department, their repair facility in the back there. That was actually just sold in one lot, basically, at that auction. Everything in that room. And there were thousands of those relays in there, brand new in cases. So I've got 12, 24 volts. I think I've got some that are 6 volts. I've got 120, 240 volt AC ones. But what I could do is just, and I've got a bunch of the socket bases. So for, if I wanted to use one of these with 120 volt powered radios, that'd be fairly simple to do. I could basically, I'd make up a little box, but it would be controlled by this box. So let's say radios, let's just, for an example, use radios 11 through 20 would be just like this, say mobile radios, or base stations that actually have a socket on the back to run off at 12 volts. The other ones, let's say I wanted to run radios that will not run off of they don't have a socket to run off of DC power. They only have a power cord coming out the back, or like an old tube radio. What I could do is just use the voltage. So remember, there's a terminal strip on the back for each one of these positions that's supplying power to radios. But instead of running to a radio, what I could do is run that voltage source then. So, if I'm in position 1, off of that terminal strip, that would run to a relay coil. When this switch is pushed, it would activate that relay, and then what the relay is actually controlling would be 120 volts. So I'd have an ice cube relay with a power socket, ice cube relay with a power socket, and, I'd plug that block into the wall, and then I'd plug each of the radios into that, and then when I pushed a button, push number 2, let's say, relay number 2 would energize, which would make contact. 120 volts would be able to then get to the radio. But that's a workaround I could do. I mean, honestly, there's enough room inside of this thing. I could do it on the inside. I'd still need to have. Actually, that's the only problem is there's not enough room for 120 volt jacks on the back. And honestly, I don't want to modify it. Something like this is so rare. I just want to keep it like it is. But I might do that. I might build up a box with maybe 10 for starters. I don't know. I've got 2 of these now, so I can hook up at least 40 radios. What I might do is use one of these for. Actually, what would be the ideal would be I'll use this for mobile radios, because of course mobile radios, the speaker's usually firing straight down, or some radios, like some of my Motorola's, the speaker fires straight up, but it's not facing you. Base stations usually have a speaker that's front firing, so it just sounds better. So I could use the base stations on the Lafayette, this one with mobile radios, and then I can run all, because this has that speaker output, because it can switches the speakers as well, and I can run that through probably like one of my Alltech Research QF1A filters, and then to a good, like Kenwood or a ICOM. I got piles of ham radio speakers laying around. But yes, that might be what I do someday. But yeah, so I'm on the way. I said I wanted more of them. I found another one, and the price was like $10. I think I won that auction, $10.49. I think it was. I mean, insane. I bid 300 and something. I'd have to go back and see what my bid was, but yeah, I actually bid $300 and some dollars, because I think I told Mark, I said, this is one of those things, man, I want it bad. I wasn't afraid to pay for it. Something this rare, yeah, I could build one, but honestly, the parts aren't going to cost as much as I'd pay for it. But how much time would it take me to lay something like this out? Just soldering alone. 21 coax connectors, got to remember there's 20 jacks, and then there's an input, so solder 20 coax cables on both ends, solder all of these lights in, solder all of those speaker wires, all of the power wires, do all the machining to machine out a front panel like this, try and find somebody that sells a good push-button switches like this, make up the circuit boards. Yeah, good Lord, I could have days making a cabinet. It was just so, yeah, like I say, I bid 300 something. I think the opening bid was $9.99, $10, somewhere around there. It had a bid on it. The whole listing time, it had one bid. I'm one of those like last 3 to 4 second bidders, and that's just what I did. I waited down to the last couple seconds. I typed in my 300 and whatever I bid, 317.76 or something like that probably, and I clicked bid. And yeah, $10.49 or $10.59 plus shipping. So yeah, what a steal, man! I saved myself 300 and some bucks. So there you go, the Amco. I don't know if I actually mentioned it. The model is the Amco model CB20 transceiver switcher.